Hi, I'm Todd from StudioPro. In this video, I'd like to share some basic tips about the various bats that we make. Of course, throwing bats are pretty simple tools, and as potters, we're all basically familiar with their use. Having said that, I've seen the same bat serve for over 10 years in one studio and fail in under a month in another. The first thing to understand is that all wood bats absorb water. Doesn't matter whether it's a masonite bat or a Medex bat, whether it's made here at StudioPro or by someone else. All wood bats absorb water, and that's okay because absorbency in wood is the quality that we like about it. It's why we choose wood bats. It helps a ball of clay stick to the surface when you're getting ready to throw, and it also facilitates a little bit of bottom drying after your piece is finished. Oftentimes I get asked by potters if they should seal their wood bats, if they should coat them in some kind of sealant. And I guess my thinking about that is, why would you want to? Again, we choose wood bats because they are absorbent. It's a desirable quality. Also, any sealant that you might apply will inevitably but unevenly become worn away. And then what happens is that water gets absorbed into that bat unevenly and has a difficult time getting out. And the kind of warping that happens then is generally pretty unmanageable. So if you're looking for an impervious bat, you should really consider a plastic bat. In that regard, they're worry-free and they really work perfectly. If you'd like to use a wood bat and you're concerned about warping, the key is to limit the amount of water absorption that happens. And it's not difficult, and I can show you how. Now, does everyone know the trick for wetting down a piece of clay that's too hard? Say you open a box of clay and you take that pug out of the bag and it's way too stiff to wedge. You could take that piece of clay and put it in a bucket of water and come back a day later, and what you're going to find is a stiff piece of clay that's wet on the outside. If you want to wet that clay down, what you need to do is wire cut it into thinner slabs, wrap it up in a damp towel, put it in a plastic bag, and then come back a few days later. And the reason that works is because the water is absorbed slowly and over a longer period of time. Wood absorbs water in much the same fashion. So if you want to avoid excessive warping, the key is to limit that kind of absorption. The key to minimizing excessive water absorption into your bats is to minimize the amount of time that your pots spend on them. Like most potters, in my own studio I generally throw in series. At the end of the series, if I haven't already done so at the wheel, I wire cut each of the pots off their bats. I then monitor the drying of those pots, and when I can handle them, I lift them off the bats and move them onto a table, onto wear boards, or flip them onto other bats. Next, I scrape the remaining pads of clay off the bats before they dry. This keeps that little bit of water out of the bats and prevents dust when scraping. Be sure to check that the edge of your scraper is in good condition, and especially that the corners are not bent. Scraping with a damaged scraper is a good way to gouge the surface of your bats. Also, be gentle when scraping the mounting holes and edges of your bats. This is all you really need to do to get your bats ready for their next use. Begin your next throwing session using the bats not most recently used, giving those bats plenty of time to dry. The best practice for removing your bats from the wheel head is to place a scraper under the edge of the bat between the two holes. You can then rotate the wheel around so that the scraper is behind the round hole and then lift gently. By lifting from this side, the pin won't bind up inside the oval hole and your bats will come easily off the wheel head. Finally, here's a tip specific to caring for plastic bats. With plastic bats, you don't have to worry about warping due to water absorption, but where you can get into trouble is if you store them improperly. Like all bats, plastic bats are probably best stored vertically in a bat rack. If you are going to stack them, be sure that they are clean and stacked without obstructions between them, such as pieces of dried clay or tools. If they're not stacked flat, they could begin to bend over anything left between them. Thanks for watching. I hope you found something helpful in all this. And thanks again for considering StudioPro bats. If you'd like to buy some, you can do so from a number of terrific ceramic suppliers, some of which you're probably already doing business with, and you can find a list of those on our website. You can also purchase all of those same bats directly from us, as well as the StudioPro line of signature bats, a number of specialty bats, and a couple of tools for wheel throwers that you've likely not seen before. If you'd like to check those out, you can go to www.studioprobats.com. Keep making great pots.